It was just another Thursday. I got home from work, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. The house greeted me with silence, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional call of birds settling in for the night. No surprise, Madeleine wasn't home. Lately, she had thrown herself into her endless charity events, as if they were the only thing that mattered. I tossed my keys onto the table and was about to head upstairs to change when something on the dining table caught my eye. An elegant wooden box. Instantly, I recognized it. Madeleine's little casket, the one she guarded like a dragon hoarding treasure. But here it was, out in the open, and unmocked. A strange unease settled in my stomach, mingling with curiosity. I walked over and picked it up. It felt heavier than I remembered. Heavy with secrets, maybe something more. For a second, I hesitated. I knew I was crossing a line. Madeleine had always been clear about this. Her box, her rules. But then again, doubt had been whispering in my ear for weeks now, growing louder each day. So I gave in. The lid creaked open. Inside, jewelry was carefully arranged, necklaces resting on plush velvet, rings tucked into tiny compartments, earrings paired with meticulous precision. But the gleam of gold and the sparkle of gemstones weren't what grabbed my attention. No, it was the photograph half hidden beneath a bracelet at the very bottom. I pulled it out. My fingers trembled. And there he was. Andrew, my best friend, my college roommate, the man who stood by my side on my wedding day, the godfather of my daughter. Smiling, effortless as always, the kind of smile that made people like him instantly. The kind of smile, apparently, that had won over my wife. I flipped the photo over, my breath catching in my throat. Scrawled in Madeleine's unmistakable handwriting were 3 words: my true love. The room tilted. A rush of heat surged through my body. Rage, hurt, disbelief, all colliding at once. I felt like an idiot. Like a bad cliché, the clueless husband in some cheap drama. Outside, a door slammed. I shoved the photo back, snapped the box shut, and stepped away just as Madeleine walked in. Her cheeks were flushed, either from wine or whatever wonderful evening she had just had. "How was your day?" she asked casually. Then she paused, eyes narrowing just a little. Something wrong. I forced my voice to stay even. "Interesting," I said. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, worry, or was it just my imagination? "I found something today." Madeleine hesitated. A brief, almost imperceptible pause. Then she smiled, but there was something off about it. Forced. "Oh," she asked lightly. "And what might that be?" I tilted my head, watching her closely. "How important is trust in a marriage?" She laughed, though it sounded nervous. "Wow, that's a heavy question. Should I be concerned?" "Not yet," I said, and there was an edge to my voice. A warning. Her lips parted, but she didn't push. She only nodded and disappeared down the hall, probably to freshen up, as if everything was normal. I sat down, my mind spinning. I knew what had to be done. The betrayal ran too deep. The wound was too raw. Oh, we'd talk, eventually. But not tonight. Tonight, I had planning to do. As the night deepened and the house wrapped itself in silence, I stared into the abyss of my marriage, and in that darkness, I saw the first glimmer of freedom. The morning sun streamed through the windows, bright and unforgiving. But to me, the day felt suffocatingly dark. I had spent the entire night playing out different scenarios in my mind. Every single one ended the same way, with Madeleine's betrayal laid bare. Today, the illusion of our perfect life would shatter. She was in the kitchen, humming softly as she made coffee. The warmth in her voice, the ease of her movements, it all clashed with a storm brewing inside me. I ran my hand over the cool marble countertop, grounding myself for what was about to unfold. Madeleine. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. We need to talk. She turned, her expression laced with mild curiosity. Of course. What's wrong? I didn't bother with small talk. It's about us, about trust. The porcelain cup in her hands clinked lightly against the saucer. Trust. Her voice was even, but I caught it, that flicker of panic in her eyes. A split-second betrayal of control. She knew. I found your box open last night, I said, my tone flat, unforgiving. Her face drained of colour. That calm, carefully curated composure cracked right down the middle. Oh, a pause, then a forced smile. And what did that tell you? It told me more than you hoped, I replied coolly. The words hung heavy between us. I saw the photo, Madeleine, the one with Andrew. Her hands trembled. A thin stream of coffee spilled over the edge of the cup. For a moment, she said nothing. Then finally she exhaled, a mix of resignation and defiance flickering in her eyes. I can explain. Her voice wavered, but she was already slipping into defense mode. I think you should, I said, folding my arms, bracing for whatever half-truth she was about to serve. She set down the cup and took a shaky breath. It's not what you think. Andrew and I, yes, we were close, but it wasn't an affair. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. The photo, the inscription, my true love, that's not just close, Madeleine. That's intimate. That's personal. My voice had risen, the dam of anger beginning to crack. Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved. She lifted her chin slightly. Yes, we got too close, maybe too close, but it was never physical. I swear, it was emotional stupidity. I scoffed. Emotional stupidity. That was the best she could come up with. She clenched her fists, her body rigid. I was going to end it, she insisted. I laughed again, bitter, hollow. A mistake, huh? One that lasted how long? Weeks? Months? How many lies, Madeleine? How many secrets? She swallowed hard. We never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I shot back. Both of you did. I stepped closer, the ache in my chest, sharp, suffocating. Now I have to figure out what that means for us. Madeleine reached out, fingers hesitating in midair, as if she already knew I wouldn't take her hand. Please, she whispered, let's talk about this. We can see a counselor. We can try. Try. I cut in. Try to fix what? The lie. The betrayal. I shook my head. I need space. I grabbed my keys and turned for the door. Please, she called after me, her voice trembling. Don't do anything reckless. But it was too late for that. I had already made my decision. And I knew exactly where I was going. The drive to Andrew's place was a blur. My mind was a whirlwind, my grip on the wheel tight enough to hurt. I parked at the curb, took a deep breath, and headed inside. I didn't knock. Instead, I used the spare key he had given me years ago for emergencies. Funny how that worked out. The door swung open with force, slamming against the frame. The sound echoed through the quiet apartment. Andrew was sprawled on the couch. He sat up abruptly, his face shifting from surprise to something else. Something closer to fear. Everything okay, he asked, his voice hesitant. No, Andrew, it's not. I stepped toward him, closing the distance between us in seconds. How could you do this to me? His confusion lasted only a second before realization dawned. Listen to me, whatever you think. I know enough, I cut him off. I pulled the photo from my pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table between us. It landed face up. My true love. The words stared back at us like a loaded gun. Andrew's gaze dropped to the photo. His face went pale. It's not what it looks like. Andrew's voice shook as he spoke. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Don't insult me any further, I growled. I trusted you, Andrew. You weren't just a friend. You were my brother, in every way but blood. And Madeleine? My voice was razor sharp. How long? His silence was deafening. How long? A few months, he whispered, barely audible. A few months. I repeated, the words like acid on my tongue. It started as just a conversation, right? Andrew's jaw tightened. His eyes flickered with shame, but no excuse would be enough. Months of lying, months of betrayal. I forced out, my chest tightening. Did you both decide I didn't matter? That I could just be ignored? My fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to hit him, shake him, make him feel even a fraction of what I felt. I'm sorry, he muttered. I never meant for this to happen. It got out of control. His usual confidence had crumbled. We should have stopped. Both of us. I'm sorry. Sorry. My voice was ice cold. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. I exhaled sharply, the weight of it crushing down on me. You destroyed everything. For what? A thrill? A moment of weakness? Or just because you could? Andrew didn't answer. He wouldn't even look at me. He started to say something, then stopped, as if realizing there was nothing left to salvage. You stay away, I said, my voice steady and final. From me, from my family. We're done. His face went pale. If I see you near Madeleine again, if I find out you've contacted her. I let the sentence hang in the air, letting the unspoken threat settle. The next photo people see of you will be in a completely different context. He swallowed hard. Please, he said, his voice desperate. Let me fix this. You've done enough. I turned and walked out. The door slammed behind me, sealing the end of a friendship that had already been rotting from the inside. I walked to my car in a daze. The conversation with Andrew should have given me some satisfaction, some sense of control. Instead, there was just emptiness. Grief for the life I thought I had. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, no longer a whisper in the back of my mind. It was real, undeniable. My phone buzzed, vibrating against my leg. Her name flashed on the screen. Every ring, every message, was a reminder of how deep her deception ran. I already knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. And I was going to make damn sure this chapter closed for good. Days passed in heavy, suffocating silence. I moved through them like a ghost. Everything felt mechanical, numb. But beneath it all, a storm brewed. The decision was made. Now it was just about execution. Madeleine had called, texted, tried to reach me in every way she could. Her messages swung wildly between pleading and anger. None of them mattered. I knew one thing for certain. Closure wouldn't come from forgiveness. It would come from ending this the right way. On a cold, grey Friday, I asked her to meet me at our cafe. The same one where we had celebrated anniversaries. Where we had shared quiet moments, just the two of us. The place where, once upon a time, we had been happy. It only felt right that it should be the place where everything ended. I sat at our usual table waiting. Every second felt heavier than the last. Then she arrived. Her face was pale, drawn, her eyes red from crying. It didn't stir anything in me. She sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled off her coat. "Why here?" she whispered. "What is this?" I met her gaze, my voice cold and detached. "To end things where we once had the best of times. To remind us both what you threw away." She flinched, but she didn't argue. She nodded, swallowing hard, accepting the cruelty of it. "What do you want from me now?" she asked quietly. "Answers," I said flatly. "The truth, just once." "Why him, Madeleine? Why betray me like this?" She closed her eyes, inhaling shakily. "It wasn't planned," she murmured. "It just happened. I was lonely. You were always busy, and Andrew was there." Her voice broke. "It was stupid, selfish. I regret it more than you could ever imagine." I leaned in slightly, locking eyes with her. "Not enough to stop," I said. She looked away. Because there was nothing to argue. I had made my decision. I want a divorce. I want you out of my life for good. Madeleine's eyes filled with fresh tears. But she didn't beg. She didn't plead. She knew it was pointless, that the damage was beyond repair. I took a slow, deliberate breath. "And one more thing." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I sent the photo and a letter. To everyone. Family. Friends. Colleagues. Let them see the real Madeleine. Her face went white. The sadness drained from her eyes, replaced by raw, unfiltered horror. "You wouldn't?" She choked out. "I would," I said simply. And I had. "It'll follow you for a long time, Madeleine." She shot up from her seat, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "How could you be so cruel?" she whispered, her voice breaking. I let out a breath, something between a laugh and a scoff. "How could I?" My voice rose, the anger that had been simmering finally boiling over. "You ruined us, Madeleine. I'm just making sure the world knows who you really are." She stood there, trembling. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Her exit was silent, a cruel contrast to how loud her betrayal had been. I sat there long after she left, alone, the weight of everything pressing down on me. What I had done. What had been done to me. The cafe emptied around me. Outside, the sky darkened. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a victory. It was just the end. I walked home alone. The first raindrops began to fall, soft and cold against my skin, like the sky itself was mourning what had died between us. And in that moment, I realized, revenge hadn't brought me peace, only more pain, deep, dark, endless. Madeleine and Andrew were gone, but the shadows they left behind, they would linger. I had won, if you could even call it that. But at what cost? The love I had known was gone. All that remained was emptiness. An emptiness filled with the echoes of betrayal. And the cold comfort of revenge. The road ahead was uncertain, strewn with the wreckage of the life I once cherished.